Tonight. The determination of the Occupy Wall Street protesters appears to be paying off. As I mentioned at the top of the show, they have been camped out in New York City for almost 4 full weeks now, and they even managed to fend off an effort to temporarily evict them, ostensibly to facilitate the cleaning of Zuccotti Park. They didn't believe that, though. The movement also seems to be winning over the American people. A new Time magazine poll finds that 54% of respondents have a favorable view of Occupy Wall Street, and that is compared to 27% who have a positive view of the Tea Party. So for more on the protests' popularity, we are turning to our Reporter Roundtable. This week I am joined by Rick Carlin of the Albany Times-Union and Capital Tonight's own Mike Whittemore. And across the table is Yancey Roy of Newsday. Nice to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
So this is, I'll start with you, Yancey, since you're all alone on this side. It seems like there's a fight going on right now as to whether or not this was Mayor Bloomberg blinking or the people who owned the park blinking. I mean, who won here and who lost?
Well, probably the protesters won, right? I mean, they got to stay there without the cleanup happening and without being sort of moved from their perch. And certainly they were claiming victory. The interesting thing is not just Bloomberg, but Governor Cuomo and other politicians have been really treating this a little bit gingerly, not quite really sure how to, for all the times these guys are very forceful in their opinions and come down on one side or another. They've been, very careful to straddle and say, we understand the protest, Wall Street is important to us.
Right.
And so they have tried to not fall into the winner or the loser category. They've been very delicate with it.
And I see the mayor's point, too, because he's trying to say, like, we have a city to run and, people have to get where they need to go, and disruptions are a tough thing for people when people have to get through the park and Wall Street and all the other places. So
it could be those poll numbers are showing that there's a lot of people look favorably upon these protests, and there's a lot of anger at all the shenanigans on Wall Street, and any politician, being a politician, is going to realize that. So they might be holding back a little bit.
In his usual way, though, Bloomberg, I thought, went just one step too far this morning. He was on his radio show and he said, elected officials, unnamed, have made threatening phone calls to Brookfield, which is the private owner of this park, and then he couldn't back it up, and so I'm not surprised that maybe there were phone calls by people like you mentioned before we started, Dick Godfrey.
Well, Dick Godfrey, longtime assemblyman.
We don't know if he called, just for the record.
He doesn't strike me as the type that would do that.
No, but he was there.
He was there at 6 a.m. this morning, according to his press release. He's always been on the more liberal side of things, and he said he was there to help enforce the free speech rights. And then he went into a little bit of a dialogue about the abuses he felt have been going on Wall Street. So maybe we'll see some more politicians starting to show up there too if this thing goes on.
Yeah, they're certainly getting some momentum, as you mentioned, the polls. So people are starting to get on the bandwagon.
And did you guys see towards the end of the day, folks were talking about making winter preparations?
See that? I mean,
at the site, it's like settling in, hunkering down for the long term.
They're going to build fires and braziers.
I'm impressed by their longevity for this.
But to what end? They need to have They need to have a clear objective. They need to say, here's what we need. We need the government to break up the banks, or we need more accountability, or we need campaign finance reform. They need to have some much clearer sense of what their goal is.
I know that. I thought that before the poll came out, I would agree with that. But now it seems like everyone seems to be agreeing with them, even though they're getting criticized for that reason a lot in the media. And now it seems like everyone's, because the economy is bad for a lot of different reasons, and everyone has a lot of different reasons for protesting. So, I think the overlying message is like, fix it. That's kind of
such an amorphous message.
Right. It's broad and general, but
fix
I mean,
what?
exactly. So.
And now you're seeing on Monday you're going to have, and we'll be bringing you a couple of the people who be here. You're seeing the millionaire's tax message. They're trying to drive that, right? And so far we've seen the governor say no way. We've also heard from the PEF folks that it was unfair, that they feel that it's being taken out of their hide, that the governor refused to extend the millionaire's tax, which of course will be expiring at the end of
the governor,
December.
with I think some degree of political deafness, has said that he's initially he didn't say anything, but then he said he's okay for Barack Obama's millionaire's tax.
Yeah, I don't
That's
get the
a
logic
national
in that.
tax. Everyone pays that, but New York would be less competitive if we had a higher tax compared to the other states. He sort of massaged his way out of that to some extent.
I think the point he was trying to make is that you can't move from New York to New Jersey or vice versa to escape federal tax.
Right. Yeah.
No matter where you
precisely.
go, the federal tax
Yeah.
is a federal tax. But you can to escape a state tax.
Yes.
Is sort of what he was trying to say.
Exactly.
In that.
And we're
And that
And
analogy,
it also points to the larger dilemma that any leading politician in New York has, is that Wall Street really is the economic engine that drives this state. At least 20% of the state
18,
revenue.
according to State
20,
Controller
18 to 20%.
DiNapoli, yeah.
A lot comes from Wall Street, from the activities on Wall Street.
You know, though,
powers state government.
And New York is such a high cost of doing business state. I mean, we were also speaking before this segment started. Yancey, you brought up an incident of a big company leaving Long Island.
That's right. Arrow Electronics, they are the largest privately held company on Long Island. You might not know them because they're sort of the middleman in a way. They make servers and semiconductors. They don't really have their names on household products, but they up and moved their headquarters, where they'd been on Long Island since for decades, to Colorado. They say there will not be any loss of jobs on Long Island, but it's certainly a blow to the pride of downstate. And was the other interesting thing. They negotiated somewhere around $10 or $12 million worth of incentives from Colorado. They never picked up the phone and asked New York to match it whatsoever. The first time that New York officials heard they were leaving was when they read about it. This was a decision they decided to move without even consulting New York.
And the same week, ironically, General Electric said they're putting a new solar panel plant in Colorado rather than in Schenectady, New York. They're going to leave some of the researchers in the Schenectady area, but they're developing their factory in Colorado.
So what does that mean, though, to the Cuomo administration, which says that they're actually, it's jobs, 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 and now you can't incentivize everyone quite clearly. And now we see, and they were here yesterday, this pork lawsuit about incentivizing might be illegal, period.
The reality is New York has a long way to go to become competitive. I've lived in Colorado actually years ago.
Oh, I forgot you were a ski bum out there.
And I got to tell you, like, the property taxes out there are a fraction of what you pay in New York. It's just, it's a lot less expensive on a lot of levels to live out there, and it's very hard for New York to compete with the Sun Belt states in general, not just Colorado.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like you said, their mantra has been jobs, jobs, jobs this second half of their first year in office. And though there's nothing to say that the administration did anything wrong or maybe missed an opportunity with Arrow Electronics, it just does, it's a blow to the pride. It's not certainly something that anyone in the administration would want to hear about, or in the state, period, to hear about, a major Fortune 500 company just pulling up and moving its headquarters west.
Yeah, at the same time that the governor is right now still not yet negotiated this new contract with PEF, right? We expect an executive board vote on Monday. The governor may be sort of kind of saying the October 19th deadline for the layoffs is not exactly final, but I mean
it's coming down the wire.
Yeah, it's really
the
coming
train
down
is
the
coming
wire.
down the tracks.
Yeah.
They're. I mean, they really seem to be stuck to some extent. I mean, initially there was some talk about they'd rather have a 3-year than a 5-year contract, but then on Monday, PEF's president, Ken Burnian, started talking about layoff protections. He wants more layoff protections. And then 2 days later, or I'm sorry, a day later, it was on Tuesday, not Monday, Cuomo was very clear in his press conference saying there's no such thing as an ironclad no
Well, there
layoff
can't be when
pledge.
you're trying to consolidate
Right.
government the way that he's doing.
My sense is that they have a lot of ground to cover if they're going to come together.
And it's a fine line to walk, too, because all of the CSEA members are not going to be happy if all of a sudden PEF comes back, gets a better deal, and they'll say, hey, why couldn't we get a better deal?
What's the legality on that? Does anyone know? I mean, once you sign, you've signed,
I don't believe that there's
right?
a Me Too, in terms of the contract
The contract, the
being signed.
CSEA folks. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
You were starting to say.
I don't believe that there's a hard and fast Me Too law. I don't know that they can enforce something like that, but they certainly would be really unhappy and come next contract.
Right. It's been more of a past practice, and I'm sure everyone's been talking about it this week. Monday is when the board of the Public Employees Federation meets, and they will be coming tentatively coming into to meet Monday, and they're looking at 72 hours before, in theory, some of their members could be out of a job. So
and that's really cutting it close.
It's a train that's moving quickly down the track.
The irony is, you said jobs, jobs, jobs. The governor keeps talking about we need jobs, we need jobs. At the same time, you're going to have this potential spectacle of 3,500 people.
But
being
at the
out of
same
job.
time, and we've discussed this on the show before, and I'm sure we will discuss it again, depending on how the PEF contract war, if you will, plays out. can't go back on his word. The man said, if you don't do this, I'm going to lay you off. So he either looks weak, or he sacrifices 3,500 jobs, or the union, and the folks who get to stay, I mean, it's very sad for 3,500 people, and that's families and jobs and kids and all sorts of things, but they get to have jobs.
Or is there a third way? Is there just, do the actual layoffs go a little bit slower? Not all 3,500 people are going to be gone on the 19th.
Right.
They're trying to move them around.
They could take a hard look at attrition, let that take its course, maybe even hire back some of the people down the road.
Yeah.
And he might be able, again, to kind of massage his way out of the full number, the full 3,500 tally.
We will see. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to thank you very much, Yancey Roy. Mike Whittemore, thank you for being here. Also, Rick Carlin, thanks very much.